Ryan Woodruff, Chief Executive Officer.
Can you tell me about your own mental health journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I always start my story as a child, and growing up, we moved around quite a bit, and for a young kid to move around and try to integrate into new communities is a challenge, and it somewhat leads to different coping mechanisms. But for me personally, it led to a lot of just isolation and just continued challenges with trying to blend in. So you try to be a chameleon, you try to fit into the new social groups, and it can be a challenging when you're never in one spot for a long period of time. As I was growing up, I had this vision of going into the military. It's something that I wanted to do from a very young age, and I can't really pin why. I didn't have very many family members that served in the military, but I immediately gravitated towards the Marine Corps. And I did that because I knew the Marine Corps had a reputation for being one of the more challenging branches, had a reputation for being one of the most the strongest branches we had in our nation's military, and so I chose that route, and probably because a lot of that rooted feeling as a child, just being an underdog my whole life, and trying to do something to feel a little bit more empowered. And so when I graduated high school, I enlisted in the Marine Corps, and it was 2005. So this was shortly after the events of 9/11 and the height of the war in Iraq. And I enlisted as a infantry rifleman. So right out of the gate, I knew that I would likely be deploying to Iraq shortly after I enlisted. And so that begins a very significant chapter in my life. I enlisted and ended up deploying to Iraq within 7 months of being dropped to my first unit. And that was 2006. And so there was a lot of conflict where I was. And, unfortunately, not all of us came home from that deployment. And having experienced that at the young age of 19, being a very formative stage of our lives, it's you learn how to cope with things in unhealthy ways. And so for me, I'd already developed an avoidance response as a kid, and so going to war at 19 and coming home, not much had changed from that, except now I had the ability to cope with alcohol, and I did that for a long period of time. Didn't really face the fact that I had lost a lot of brothers, and I didn't go through what normal people do in a grieving process. Instead, I just kind of pushed through it. Didn't really have much time to think, because within a few more months we had deployed again to Iraq. So, coming back from my first deployment, we had about 7 months before we went back. And that unlike the first deployment, this one wasn't as bad, but nonetheless, you're still deployed in a combat zone, and you're asked to do a specific job. And for a Marine Corps rifleman, the job is to locate, close with, and destroy the enemy. So in both cases, you really, it shapes your identity and the fabric of who you are. And so coming back from that and trying to reintegrate into society was a huge challenge for me. So, the first thing is, what are you going to do with this? And are you going to continue to stay in the military, or are you going to try to go back into your community? And for me, having made it back from 2 deployments, I decided that the grass is probably greener on the other side, and I wanted to take my shot at civilian life. And you form a picture in your mind of what that's going to look like. And unfortunately for me and many other veterans that get out, it doesn't always go according to plan. And so, as a infantry rifleman, you develop a certain set of skills that are closely aligned with law enforcement, and that's the path that I chose to take. And that didn't work out for me. So I went to school originally for criminal justice, but I pivoted to forestry and natural resources. But I'll tell you, from my initial experience with going into school after having completed 2 combat deployments, I I just couldn't fit into the social groups again. And so this carries forward. And it was, it really became apparent to me during those first couple months that something wasn't working out. And for many of us, we default back to our home base. Well, if I can't make it in the civilian world, and if this isn't going to work out, how do I just get back into the military? Which is, interestingly enough, the one thing that a lot of us, we wanted to get away from. But you find comfort in some of the adversity that you face because you just don't fit in anywhere else. And so, the thing for me is I wasn't welcomed into a community that was looking after my best interest. When you get out of the military, you have a couple of days of transition training. Usually it's like 3 days, and it's to prepare you for what civilian life is like. And obviously, after 4 years, 2 combat tours at a very significant development stage of your life, 3 days isn't enough to teach you what it is to be a contributing member of the community again. And so coming out of that, I continuously just tried to figure out my own path. But I didn't have a lifeline. I didn't directly attach myself to a specific organization. I was using the Veterans Administration Hospital to the best of what I thought I could, but still was missing the market, finding purpose and identity. And so going through that, you tend to spiral, and things don't really just get better on their own. And as someone in my shoes, I didn't really recognize that I had an alcohol problem. And I lived with some peers of mine that had also separated from the military, so we were all doing the same things. And it was really about, several years later, almost a decade before I started to figure out like there's a significant issue here. In particular, after completing my college years, I ended up getting a job with a local tree company, and I did that for several years. But the problem was I was already facing significant physical injury, and that wasn't making it any better. And so a friend of mine that had worked for this organization, Clear Path for Veterans, reached out to me, and he said, "Hey, look, man, there's a job available for someone like yourself that is navigating through your transition from military to civilian culture, and we would love for you to join our team and help other veterans navigate those challenges." And so I said, "Yeah, that sounds like I could find some meaning and purpose behind that." But really, to be honest with you, knowing what I know now, and it's very clear to me that I wasn't really ready to walk shoulder to shoulder with other veterans and help them find a successful transition because I hadn't done that myself. So coming into this organization, I was really immediately immersed into an environment of both civilians and veterans that really wanted to better the situation, like look at the problems and unique challenges that veterans are facing and provide them with a longitudinal journey towards betterment. And for me, that was the first time where I started to see some true intentionality behind welcoming our veterans home. And something that's lost, but I would also say that, veterans don't really go out seeking the help that they need. So that's one of the unique challenges that we face, is that it's not easy to reach out for a lifeline, in part because there's not a lot of people out there that have shared lived in an experience, and it's hard to communicate, what exactly is the issue? Why aren't you finding a seamless trajectory towards these goals you're trying to meet? And it's hard to explain. I mean, when you had experienced significant combat, have gone through loss, we're given the authority to take life and war, and then you come back and think you're going to find a job as a PE teacher right out of the gate. That takes a little bit more than that. And so for my first year, I was helping other veterans that were really facing much more significant challenges than I had, that had been out of the military for 10, 20, 30 years. A lot of them were homeless, facing significant substance abuse, suicidal ideation, and so on. And they couldn't even put food on the table. And so I was like, this is humbling for one, but it helped me pause and take a closer look in the mirror and just ask myself, like, what should I be doing if I'm going to be a contributing member towards these other veterans trying to get out of these holes? And at the same time, being immersed into this new model like ClearPath as a peer mentor, I started to think about changing my life and doing something different. So I had got into therapy at a local vet center and started to talk to people. I started to adopt different practices like mindfulness meditation and really pause and start working through some of these issues that I seemingly couldn't get through and were just going through a negative feedback of, you know, avoidance. And it clearly wasn't working at this point. The alcohol was still a problem. And I was introduced to a program that involved placing service dogs with veterans diagnosed with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. And this was included at ClearPath. I was working alongside this program as a peer mentor, but not directly involved with the canine program at the time. And to be honest with you, I didn't think that I would be a deserving veteran for this program. I don't know why, but I thought there were others out there that could benefit from this. But after talking with some staff and particularly the founder of ClearPath, they convinced me to apply for this program. And I was accepted. And that's really was a significant turning point for me to work with a dog that, you know, was non-judgmental, didn't look at me as, you know, what I carried or the wounds that I had, and just really wanted to seek social interaction with me authentically, genuinely. And so that started to peel this big onion of some of the deep-seated wounds that I was carrying. And I engaged in that for almost a year. And the dog that I was placed with didn't end up becoming a service dog for different reasons, but she had helped me discover my affinity for training dogs and also helping other veterans navigate this process as well. So from there, I decided that I was going to take a career change and move from, you know, doing the pure mentor work and going to a dog training field. So I did that. And, you know, all the while, one thing I always tell people is dogs bring out the best in us, but they also reveal in us some characteristics that we should think about paying attention to. I won't say change all the time, but one of the things that I had realized, and there's a reason why my dog didn't become a service dog, was because there was a lot of things that I had left unfinished within my own mental health journey. And when you're feeling, you know, a constant heightened level of arousal and hypervigilance, and your cortisol levels are through the roof, that is all transferable to the dog, right? Like, so they feel the same feelings. We call this vicarious traumatization, and this dog was feeding off of my energy. And over time, she really didn't like it when people got into my space. And so developed some behavioral challenges that didn't allow for her to become a fully trained service dog. But it also helped me recognize that I need, in order for this to be successful, regardless of the outcome of this dog's career, which she ended up being my pet, I need to make some significant changes. So right along after my first year at ClearPath, I had quit drinking cold turkey. And this was not only driven from my experience here, but because my family life was kind of a wreck. I had just had children in 2017 and a set of twins, and I was trying to build this life, and, you know, alcohol was getting in the way of that. And when I quit drinking, I had thought that this was going to fix everything. Like, you know, get rid of this coping strategy and start to develop some healthy habits, and you'll be better for it. But I just started something that really was just like the first step. And for that next year, truth be told, I was a hollow shell of myself. I had forgotten what it was like to be who I was without the aid of alcohol. And that was hard for me. I had lost my ability to find joy and experience some of the emotions that are just really normal to us. And I don't think a lot of people understand that that's part of this journey. If you're really you grow a dependence on alcohol, and then you're trying to quit, there's a healthy way to do that. I didn't choose the healthy way. I just decided I'm going to go through this on my own, and I'm going to quit cold turkey and see how it goes. Consequently, throughout that period, shortly after I had quit drinking, this dog that I was placed with got hit by a car.
Hmm.
And this really compounded a lot of wounding for me, because I had navigated this journey of getting the service dog to help me cope with some of the symptoms I was experiencing of post-traumatic stress. And now I'm on my way home and I hear my dog got hit by a car. And it just, first I will say in the military, I developed a reflex response that when something bad happens, I automatically go into an autopilot. That's the best way I can put it. And so it's about getting through the objectives and getting to where I need to be in order to accomplish whatever task I need to accomplish. And I think that's something that a lot of service members that experience combat develop, because, there's something that we experience called moral injury, where we're called to do things that we know are wrong and they're not okay. And how do you shut that part of your brain off so that you can continue to push through? And this is something that I learned about myself over time. So when I heard I got this phone call from this kid that hit my dog, and she said she's still alive. And I was like, okay, I'm on my way. And I get there, and then we're in a remote area in the middle of nowhere. Everything's closed. All the veterinary hospitals are shut down. I coincidentally, a veterinarian stopped and was like, she's on her way out. Her back is broken. She can't see. She's screaming in agony. And I had to end up putting my dog down myself, which, it's the best metaphor I can put it at this point was like, it was like snuffing out any hope that I had at recovery. And so, 4 to 5 months into quitting alcohol, I lose my dog. I have to put her down myself. And I would say this is close to one of the darkest moments of my life, where I was actually questioning, do I want to continue to live in this world after experiencing all this? And so I had taken some time off and just wrestled with this and tried to think of, what do I do with all of this pain? And I started to, after a couple of days, come out of this and channel this energy into, I could go back and contribute to this program and make it better than it's ever been, so nobody has to go through something like this again. And so that was the choice that I made at this moment. It was a significant crossroads. I ended up coming back to work, and after experiencing all this and saying like, hey, I just want to look at this program and do some different things. And I started to travel. And I went to this conference down in DC, and it was for an organization called Assistance Dogs International, which is the global leader in the service dog industry. And I was introduced to some amazing organizations doing some great work and wonderful dogs that are beyond anything I'd ever experienced at this point. And at that point, I had known this is what we have to achieve. We have to become an accredited member of this organization, which was a high bar, and it should be. And so I came back to this after this conference, and I had spoken to our leadership, and I said, look, give me 6 months. Let me stop the program for now, and let's see what I can do to bring it to this new level. And I started this journey of just program development and recreating this program from a grassroots, altruistic, great intended program that did good work into being an internationally accredited program that, had highly trained service dogs that were resilient to a point where, on both sides of the leash, it's important that you have a dog that has been trained and gone and selected for purpose, and that on the other end of the leash, you have to have the veteran that has gone through some treatment of their own, has developed some coping strategies, and are ready for placement of a service dog. So these are things that I had learned in my travels and what I integrated back into this program. So while I'm doing this, We started a puppy development program, and things were ramping up like crazy, and all in a good way. We were really recreating this program, and it was really significant to me. Um, Unfortunately, again, something horrible had happened. My father had passed away. Didn't see it coming. It was he was very young. He was 59 years old, and he also had an alcohol problem. And again, like, so within a year's time frame, I quit drinking. I lost my dog. I try to channel this energy into something productive, and then I lose my father. And the best way to describe this is I feel like I was just literally brought to my knees. And so I worked through it, but it was during this time that a volunteer at ClearPath had approached me and said, like, you look like you're kind of in the thick of it, my friend. Like, can I offer you a lifeline? Do you want to, come talk or grab coffee or something? And he said that he meets with a group of guys every week, and they work through a lot of different things, right? And he was inviting me to this men's fellowship. It was Christian based, and it was based on this book that he and this group had read that I had consequently read not much earlier. And I said, well, this seems like it makes sense. Let's give it a shot. So, after nudging me several times, I decided to join this group. And so mixed of veterans, civilians, but I felt really welcome. I didn't say a word for probably several weeks, but the vulnerability of this group of men to come out and talk about some of their wounds and their challenges and how they are working on overcoming them was, the first time that I felt that I was in an environment where I could expose myself. And so I stuck that out I've still continued to this day. It's been over 6 years since I started doing this. And I will say, like, there are so many compounding factors that contributed towards the wellness journey that I have been on since this time. Facing combat, loss, going to try to find treatment for myself and quitting the alcohol, losing the dog, finding new purpose through adversity, losing my father, finding fellowship, and then continuing to develop programs at ClearPath. It's just interesting how the world orchestrated all of this to work out. And so many years later, here we are. I'm now the CEO of this organization. We have elevated this canine program to being an internationally accredited program providing service dogs nationally. And it's incredible. Best word I can describe for this is just gratitude. I'm extremely grateful for all of this. And there's certainly more. I think that this is the abridged version of my story, but I think that encaptures quite a bit.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. You touched on a little bit, but can you tell me about the programs you have at ClearPath?
Yeah, absolutely. So we take a whole person approach. Our flagship program is our canine program, providing service dogs for veterans with post-traumatic stress. But before we get anywhere with any programs, we meet the veteran where they're at. So we do we try to approach the veteran by connecting with them first, not slamming them with paperwork and applications. And, we moving away from the institutionalized version of veteran support. We have a 78-acre campus in the middle of rural New York, and people think of New York, they think of New York City. We're
Right.
in upstate New York, and it's quite rural. There's more farmland than there are buildings. And our campus is on this beautiful property mixed of hardwoods, open lots, and it's really nice because it's just welcoming. And when veterans see us for the first time, they connect with us. We just genuinely try to get to know them. Connecting them with a peer mentor, somebody that has lived in experience, is a really important part of that, because they feel more comfortable opening up and talking about their situation, some of the challenges they might be experiencing. And so we look at the services that we provide aligned to multiple dimensions of wellness. So we offer a wellness program that does non-clinical modalities, meditation, massage therapy, polarity, various modalities that practitioners volunteer their time at ClearPath to provide. We offer employment services, family services. We do peer support, enrichment programming in our canine program. And so the idea is that wherever the veteran is on their journey, when they connect with us, we can find something available to them at ClearPath. And if it's not something that we have access to, then we have a robust network of referrals and partners that we can provide them at that time. So it's a community-based approach. At the inception of ClearPath, Melissa Spicer, who's the founder, she had developed the model and always talked about a protective circle, and that when service members come home, it's the community's responsibility to form a protective circle around them and to help them transition from where they're at to where they're going. And it takes time. One of the other important programs that we offer is through our culinary services. We do a weekly canteen where we offer a complimentary luncheon to veterans and their families. This is a great entry point for those that haven't connected with us that are local to our area. There's between 150 and 300 veterans that come every Wednesday and receive this complimentary luncheon. And it's not designed for those in crisis, but it's meant to embrace community and to help those connect and, build out their social groups. And then as we get to know them over time, we can introduce them to other programs. So ClearPath is a place. It's a physical location. It's a campus. It was renovated from an old golf lodge, so it has a beautiful view. At me talking about it never does it justice. I say this all the time. You got to see it. It overviews Oneida Lake, which is one of the bigger Finger Lakes in central New York, and it's just incredible. And that's part of the vision. As Melissa and the founders, when they bought this property, they said, like, this is the place. Like, this is exactly it. When you come here, you feel relief coming off your shoulders, and that's the idea behind it.
When I was doing my research, I saw you're already thinking about expansion. What is it like having this place continue to grow?
It's humbling, and again, like, the best word I can describe is gratitude. I've been with the organization for about 9 years, and starting as a peer mentor and working my way through to the position I'm in now, I've been able to be there for some of the significant growth that I've seen. So covering 33 counties in New York State, and then offering 2 national programs, one through our canine program and another through a new troops to teachers model that we developed called Operation Socrates. It's been amazing. But the need, it seems like we can't keep up. You know what I mean? There are so many out there, going back as far back as the Vietnam era, and then in some cases we still see World War II veterans coming to see us at ClearPath. And these issues don't just fade away or go extinct. They endure. And, having just come out of a serious conflict in the Middle East, we expect that these men and women that have served to continue to need community-based organizations like ours. And so for this next chapter for us, looking at our campus and our flagship program being our canine program, we've identified that being the first program that we really want to expand. And so everything up until this point has been on the existing facility, which it meets the initial requirement, but we're far beyond capacity at this point. We have 42 service dogs in training. We work with over 100 volunteers within our canine program. We have a puppy development center. We need to create a dedicated facility specific for our canine program. That's what's next for us. We're going to be launching a capital campaign to build out our campus and specifically focused on the canine program. So building out this facility is going to allow us to triple the number of service dogs we can have in training and triple the number of veterans that we could serve in a given year. We cover all the cost of training and placement, and everything that anybody engages in at ClearPath from the veteran's perspective is at no cost for them. And so we feel it's very important to maintain the integrity of that. And that includes when we bring somebody in nationally to receive training in our service dog program, if we'll put them up in a hotel or an Airbnb locally while they're there with us for 10 days. And since we have so much space on the property, we thought it'd be really cool to do cabins. Yeah. So we're looking to build a about 8 cabins to host veterans and their families while they're going through these training programs. So the potential is great. There's a lot that we can do with this expansion, and we're really looking forward to it.
How does it feel for you to be talking to other veterans and helping them along their journey?
It, as I had said before, it was really hard for me to find meaning and purpose outside of my time in the military. And so, these days I would say I feel more grounded than I've ever felt in my life. That this this path that I'm on now was kind of tailor made for me. It feels like, and people keep telling me this, and it's just incredible. The impact that ClearPath has is it's we're only on page one. I think that it's going to continue to grow, but I'm so thankful to be on the journey, and just to be there on a Wednesday or any day for that matter, and just be myself and welcome a veteran to the campus and meet them where they're at, and also be able to share some of the life experiences. There's nothing like it, and to know exactly what they're going through, I think that's really important, to meet them where they're at and identify with some of the challenges that they're facing, and then help them develop a custom roadmap to where they're going to go. So it's wonderful.
With dogs, how important is it to have them as a support system?
It's interesting, because the way we train service dogs is, it's really important first to get to know the veteran that you're serving, because post-traumatic stress disorder presents itself differently amongst everybody that struggles with this, and to get to know them and also get to know their support system, their family members, spouses, so that we can truly understand how post-traumatic stress visually represents itself. And what I mean by that is, if somebody is experiencing anxiety or panic attacks or nightmares, or they disassociate, usually there is something going on physically that you can pick up on. It could be bouncing your knee, touching your face, twisting your wedding band. It could be staring off into the distance. Those are pictures that we can then train the dog to respond to. So having that information up front is just critically important. And then when we teach the dog to be fluent in responding to those different symptoms, and the veteran experienced that for the first time, it's incredible. I mean, there's no words to describe it. Oftentimes it's you see tears, and you see somebody that's really experiencing for the first time an animal that's responding to a challenge that they're facing. I would also say, though, that the bond behind the partnership is even more important to that. Just looking into the eyes of a dog and petting them, there's enough research and science out there and data that suggest all the benefits of the human-animal bond, releasing oxytocin, providing grounding, and relieving you of the stress that you're carrying. So, I mean, most people get pet dogs because they want to welcome a new member into their family. It helps them feel better. And we're just taking a dog, particularly we train labs and golden retrievers, and we also do an owner-trainer model, which opens the gate for any breed. I will say any breed will have their own unique challenges, but we still give everybody a shot. And it's just incredible to see the team building happen through the process. It's a short period of time. When they're in training with us, it's about 10 days, but they're training with their dog for 8 hours a day. And then after a couple of days, they're bringing them back to their hotel room, and they're living with them, and they're really becoming a team throughout the process. There hasn't been a graduation in the last 9 years that I've experienced that I've seen a dry eye in the room, because you see the fruits of all of this once they're in front of all of these people, sometimes sharing their story, but just being present with their dog, and people get to feel that with them. Additionally, I mean, we have volunteers that are raising these puppies. So we'll do a leash passing ceremony. And some of these volunteers, they're with these dogs for over almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So they're helping raise these puppies. They're going to training with them and they're developing a bond as well. And at the end of that 2 year period, they're passing the leash to the veteran that they ultimately did all this work for. So it's incredible. I mean, to experience that and to see the emotions and to give back. I mean, that's giving back. That's sacrifice on behalf of a community member that has said, you know what, like this veteran has signed this contract to fight and defend our nation. And I'm willing to go however long it needs to take to help provide them with a trained service dog and reciprocate some of the service that they provided us. So to see that all happen is truly amazing.
What do you do to help your own mental health?
I do a lot these days. So, I always tell people that if you're not trying to overcome some challenge and you're just living a life to embrace comfort, then that should be a red flag. So for me, I deal with mental stress by doing something physical. So, fitness is a big part of my life. And these days I've picked up boxing and I do that a couple times a week. I also still, rely on breathing techniques, meditation. I do that often, but for me personally, faith has been a huge part of my mental health journey. And so I found community and fellowship in faith and, waking up every day and reading the Bible and doing some moments of solitude and prayer have been really critical for me to help overcome some of the challenges that I have faced and continue to face. So these are just rhythms that I've developed and have established as critical. I always tell people that, recently over the past year or so, I read this article. I think it's called the 20-Mile March. And it's about a couple explorers, two that had particularly different methods of navigating the Arctic Circle. And I could be wrong on the geography on this, but long story short is one said they were going to go as far and wide as they possibly could every day until they couldn't go any further, then they'd set up camp. And whereas the other said they would go no less than 15 miles, no more than 20 every day, regardless of the weather or the circumstances. They were going to do, at a minimum, they would do this. At a maximum, they would go this far. And so the one explorer that maxed it out every day didn't make the journey. They ended up, I think they catastrophically all ended up dying on this trek. And the other one not only, passed the one that was trying to max out the whole time, but just by being steady and working through that and that pacing, they were able to set a record for navigating this journey. And so in my own life, I asked myself, like, what am I going to do at a minimum? And where is my max? And that's been a really important component of just my day to day, right? So at a minimum, I'm going to wake up early and I'm going to find some quiet time. Now I have 4 dogs and 2 rabbits and 2 kids and a big house full of chaos. So you got to find the uninterrupted periods of, when you can to find quietness. And I do that every morning, and I'll do a little bit of journaling. I read the Bible. I'll do a devotional. But just sit and pause and reflect every day is the best way to start my day. Depending on my day, I'll do something physical as well. Either go to the gym or I'll go to a boxing class. And again, like it's not easy to wake up before the sun rises or do something like read a book every morning or journal, but it's overcoming the adversity that the pressure produces the reward is the best way I can put it. Is putting yourself through the paces, you see the rewards on the other end of that. There's things that I don't do too, like I don't keep my phone in my room. I keep my cell phone in a different space. I try to be disciplined enough to put it down at a period of the day and not touch it again because it can quickly control your life. And just setting up those parameters so that you can control your inputs, I think is critically important.
What would you say to anyone going through a tough time?
I would say, the best thing you can do is pause and not be self-deprecating. Give yourself some grace, and whatever vision it is you have for yourself, 0.01% better every day is a good way to begin. And it doesn't need to be, a 30-day transformation. It can be incremental progress over time. When we train a dog to do anything, we usually will set them up with a particular task, and we'll do something called free shaping, where it's a successive approximation of rewards. So if I'm training a dog to open a door, for instance, I might, at the end of the exercise, that the goal is to have the dog go to the door, tug on a rope that's tied to the handle, and pull the door open, right? But there are prerequisite behaviors in order to get there, and it takes time. So it might be whatever tug toy I'm using on the door handle, just teaching the dog to grab onto that and then rewarding them for it and saying, good job. That's the end of the training session. Like, no need to continue further. Why push the envelope when we're having such good success, and ending it on a good note is a better approach to that. And then you just slowly build and chunk these behaviors together till you get to the terminal behavior. And that's all. That's like a dog training process. There's a lot of metaphors that I use in dog training when it comes to professional development and growth in ourselves, because you can learn a lot from the process. So, adopt that into your own life. Like, if you want to set up a routine where you're waking up early every day, maybe like just work through a little bit of success every day. Like it could be, if you want to wake up at 4 a.m. every day and be the next Jocko Willink and go do some hardcore workouts, but you haven't done that in the last year, maybe just give yourself some grace and wake up a little bit earlier, but not exactly 4 o'clock in the morning, and just slowly work towards that goal. And consistency, right? Like, that's huge. If you can just stick it out and develop the reflexive response to do that, that's when these things, it becomes automatic instead of something that you have to force yourself to do.
How can people reach out and learn more?
Our website, clearpathforvets.org. We're on all of the social media handles. We have a YouTube account. All of the contact us pages are on our website. We are always looking for new partners to connect with, particularly that are in the space of veteran resources, so that we could expand our network and continue to help veterans beyond the borders of New York State. And if you've heard this podcast and you want to learn more about us, you can reach out at our email account, which is just info@clearpathforvets.org.